Welcome to the TAP Top 10 Moments, starting with number 10.
That first training. WTF.
Number 9.
Change is good. You go first.
Number 8.
Cheeseburger, cheeseburger.
Number 7.
When you hear first graders saying, Mrs. Tappan, do we need to justify that?
Number 6.
Seeing Judkins get their School of Promise Award and watching Ed give his speech on the big stage.
Are you wiggling with excitement? Number 5.
The vote.
Number 4.
So I hear the piano bar was kind of a big deal.
Are you about to pee your pants? Number 3.
Imitation is the best form of flattery.
The district decided to adopt the PD model based off of TAP.
Number 2.
Teddy's last school review, and one of his quotes, "We've made an impact here in Lucia Mar Unified School District. Instruction has forever changed." Can I have an amen, brother?
And now the one you've all been waiting for. Number 1.
Alyssa plus Jamie equals Emma.
You know you've been a TAP master teacher when you know all the exterior lights that don't work at 5 in the morning.
You know you've been a TAP mentor teacher if you're skilled at changing roles within seconds.
You know you've been a TAP principal if you have your pro TAP elevator speech down pat.
You know you've been a TLT member if you bring a box of Kleenex to every post-conference.
You know you've been a TAP principal when every meeting you attend, you script the presentation and evaluate their LSP.
You might be a TAP master teacher if you're wishing you would have bought stock in Post-its.
You know you've been a TAP principal if you suddenly discover that you're a teacher again and you get to cover classes all the time.
You know you are an executive master teacher if you're best friends with all the school secretaries at all of your school sites.
You know you've been a TAP mentor teacher if you've had impromptu training trips around the country.
You know you've been a TLT member if you speak primarily in acronyms.
You know you've been a TAP master teacher if you make your bunco group each use different colored pens for accountability.
Okay. You know you've been a TAP superintendent if you've had wonderful relationships with the LMUTA leadership.
You might be a TLT member if you use thinking maps for everything.
You know you're an executive master teacher if your gas bill has tripled.
You know you've been a master teacher if you know the best places to buy chocolate.
You know you've been a TAP mentor teacher when you suddenly experience awkward eye contact in the hallway.
You know you've been a master teacher when wine night is no longer just on Friday nights.
You know you've been a TLT member if you apply the rubric to social situations.
You know you've been a TAP master teacher when you use your cognitive coaching skills on your own children and your spouse, and it works.
You know you've been a TAP mentor teacher if your students know the word field testing.
You know you've been a TAP master teacher if you've had one of Carol's caipirinhas.
And you know you are an executive master teacher if you find yourself baking treats and creating crafts at all kinds of odd hours so that you can have something to give to your master teachers at every meeting.
You might be a TAP mentor if you are still wondering what your job description really is.
My best TAP moment, I actually have two. I never was supposed to do one. One was when, like 5 years ago, when Ed Alarcio, who I taught with for 20 years, next to me comes in and says he wanted to be a master teacher. And I was astounded because here's a guy that hardly ever says anything, is settling in a lead in front of everybody, and what a spectacular job he did. And my second one is with Judkins. First of all, we weren't supposed to be in, and because another school decided to not do it, we got our chance. And then we all decided who's going to be mentor and master, and we got together, and then because of a couple of people who changed it at the last minute, we suddenly had to decide who was going to do what kind of thing. And we did it in the over at the room, I can't remember the name of the district meeting place where we were learning tap, and we all had a lunchtime meeting. We all went out there, and it just kind of shows you, the older I get, how one little thing can completely change your life. And that decision we made in that 5-minute meeting out at the fireside room out in the courtyard at lunch, sort of because we were under the gun. And when I think about how that went and how it turned out, it was amazing how little decisions you make can completely change the way we did things. And so that was sort of the beginning of our journey here at Judkins, and we've had a great time doing it and learned a lot. And so that's probably my favorite TAP moment, along with Ed. So don't hurt me, Ed.
My best TAP memory would probably be going to the conference in DC, and I remember the first day walking into the big conference room and seeing all those people from all around the nation that TAP was affecting, and I remember feeling so honored and privileged to be a part of that program and making a difference where we live.
I think the biggest thing I'd like to take out of TAP is the change in the students, and going from being sedate, not talking, things being very quiet, to now they're actually working in groups. They're showing the student-student interaction, the thinking, the problem solving. And it makes me feel really good about that, because I sit back and I'm a monitor now, in a sense, and I just watch them and listen to them and then give academic feedback. So I think the biggest thing is the change in the students and the learning and them taking hold of their education.
As a mentor as well as a teacher, I've been teaching over 20 years, and I have to be honest that it has changed me as a teacher, and it has benefited my students in so many ways. Some of my favorite things would be the student interaction and watching the kids come together and brainstorm and come up with ideas that I never would have. And even though we're not doing TAP now, it's embedded in me and it just comes out naturally, and I love that. Another favorite would be my kids giving each other academic feedback, and they got so excited about it, and it was so meaningful that I actually had them give me academic feedback, which was powerful. I just did it off the top of my head, and it told me what I did well and what I didn't do well, because did they get what I wanted them to? So I have to say I miss TAP, and it's been a great experience.
Okay, my favorite TAP moment, kind of followed by what Terry just said, if I follow him at all. He talked about the beginning of our TAP experience, and my favorite TAP experience is actually at the end, when Teddy came to our school this last year of TAP and did the school review, and the coaching session that he had with our entire TLT team was, I think, probably the most rewarding TAP experience. There's lots of them, but that one just kind of summed up our experience here for the last 4 years. And I'm not going to go into what that was, but it was very cool.
Race fans, welcome. TAP memories. Favorite memory, quite frankly, is just seeing teachers and our TAP masters and our principals being successful together. The vibe in the clusters has got to stand out for me. To see that level of professionalism in one place has been amazing. And I'd also say that I'm super excited that we've been able to sustain and continue on some of the best practices that we've learned. Thanks for everything.
Best TAP memory would have to be just experiencing all the training as a mentor, and really just this eye-opening experience of this whole culture that was beyond Napomo, and how exciting it was to see this incredible rubric and the community that TAP builds and the teachers that it breeds and fosters, and just really seeing that across other schools in other places, and knowing that we're a part of something bigger.
TAP has been a really great experience for me as a teacher. I've really learned a lot about myself as a teacher. I always thought that for me, I thought I had a lot of things that I could bring to the table as a teacher, my experience and working with kids. But when I found out through TAP was that there was a lot more to learn than what I originally was taught, even in the beginning of my teaching career. And I found that I was able to do a lot of the things that were asked for in cluster, and there were a lot of things that I couldn't do as well in cluster too, which was good. It was a struggle, and sometimes I think in life when you go through those valleys, especially in your teaching career, TAP kind of brought that valley to me. There were times when there were mountains, but there were times also there were valleys too, and it was a struggle. But that was a good thing because it made me stronger as a teacher, even as a person. And I feel now I'm a lot better in terms of working with kids in structured structured interaction activities, with my thinking and problem solving skills, and overall just being a teacher that has risen above just this than being just doing the normal things day to day. I find that I'm able to do a lot more with my creativity that I hadn't had before. So that, in a way, I am thankful for TAP because of what it's brought to me. And also it's brought to me closer to some of my colleagues too as well. I worked really well with a lot of them. I was able to use my coaching abilities to be able to coach them and really bring out the best. I think that's one of the nice things about being a mentor teacher. Able to still be in the classroom, still work with kids, and still work with my colleagues. So overall, it was a good experience, and I'm sure that I probably will for the following years to come, that I will continue with the TAP and what has it brought to me.
It's almost impossible to narrow it down to one moment, if I had to be honest, but probably one of my favorites was driving back in a car with Carol Littlefield, Corey Maitrey, Kurt Payne, and myself from a visit in Bryant, Texas, and seeing what was going on in TAP schools and just how excited we all were, and we just were like dreaming, how could we ever make this happen? How could we ever make this happen? And what do we need to do? So we decided to come back to our staff and tell them what we saw, because they all couldn't be there. And I'll never forget Corey Maitrey, who's like steel, standing up in front of the entire staff, being completely vulnerable and crying and saying, I just want to be more than competent. And I just think that rocked every person that was at that meeting and probably helped shape our vote.
So this is a video to talk about my greatest TAP memory or moment. I got pushed into this job, not forcefully, but someone recommended that I go for the master job. And I did, and I just kind of assumed that I would be at a middle school. So when I got the call that I was headed to Dorothea Lange, to elementary, and I was going to be working with a random person that I had no idea who they were, Kelly Logue at the time, people told me it was going to be okay. And you know what? They were right. It was great. It was amazing, and I've met one of the best people in the world. I hate Carol Littleman right now because I'm crying. But it was awesome, and she is incredible, and she's smart, and she's kind, and she's a wonderful mom and best friend, and wonderful to me. So I love Kelly Logue because of TAP. Thanks so much. Bye.
All right. I think that my best TAP moment was in one of my first post-conferences as an administrator, because, as most people know, I spent 2 years as a TAP career teacher, and then I switched roles, and my last 2 years have been as a TAP administrator. And so being on both sides of that lens with the reflection process was really eye-opening for me. So anyways, one of my favorite post-conferences was with Heidi Lunzer, and it was, I just tried to, really put myself in the place of a teacher, having been on that side. So anyhow, and she wrote at the end, I think she left me a Post-it note or something that said, like, thanks for that, like, that was the most comfortable I've ever been in one of these, or something like that. And it just was like, okay, that's good. That's where I want to be. That's the kind of coach and the kind of leader that I want to be, and I want to make people comfortable and reflect and not feel criticized. And so that's a pretty good TAP moment for me.
So I have two awesome moments in TAP, which I've been thrilled with, by the way. The first one was when Andy and I were sitting in this office, and all the TAP schools were voting on whether to approve TAP or not, and when the vote came in at all 7 schools, including Judkins, that was pretty amazing, because we just weren't really sure we were going to be able to anyone was going to go for it. So just the fact that teachers were willing to take a risk and try something different, that was amazing and totally satisfying. So that was the first moment at the beginning of our journey, I think. And then the last one at the end of our journey was actually sitting in on some of the TOSA meetings that you, Kelly Loga, run, because it's shown how far we've come in terms of the leadership capacity in the district that TAP has helped to develop, not only with our teachers, but also with our principals and our administrators. So seeing the lasting impact that TAP's going to have because of how much everybody has grown as being part of that system, that's probably the most satisfying thing. I mean, it wasn't just a short one-time deal. Everybody has learned and grown so much, and students are better because of it, and students have learned more, and teachers have learned more and become better teachers. So that's a tribute to everybody, the hard work and everything. So kind of that's the beginning and the last, and thanks to everybody for an amazing journey, and it's going to continue on. Thanks.
Okay, so my favorite TAP moment, I guess, was more of an experience, but I came to Judkins to teach the therapeutic learning classroom for students with ED, and Ian asked how TAP was even going to work in that program, and I said, if everyone's going to do it, I want to do it too. And I'm so glad I did, because I knew behavior coming over here, but here's where I learned to teach, and TAP has a huge impact on how I learned to teach.
Probably my favorite TAP memory was when we were doing our first interviews for TAP Master Teachers, and Teddy Broussard was there, and he was giving us advice, and one of the things he said has stuck with me, and probably the best advice I've heard for anything, and that is, if your business is picking nuts, then it's much better to hire a squirrel than to train a horse. And that's just awesome. It's great TAP.
I've been with the TAP program since its very start. In that first year, there were tremendous amounts of insecurity as to whether or not we were doing it right. My happiest moment, I would say, was the first time I had a teacher in a post-conference listen to the model I gave and just say, wow, this is fabulous. I can use this the minute I get back with my kids. And I knew that I was definitely doing something right.
Hi, Nancy here. I just want to let you know that the favorite TAP moments that I had were when students and teachers both improved, both learning and teaching. I think that that's going to be something that's going to be long-lasting in our district, and I am so happy to have been a part of that. I have some favorite TAP field trips, and one is Washington, D.C., not only for the learning that we did, but also for the time that we got to spend looking at our national treasures. I also enjoyed, well, maybe not so much, a very long, very, very, very spidery van trip, hot also, to Arizona. And I had a favorite TAP food as well. Thank you, Carol, so much for all of the Oklahoma mix that you gave us. And you're so generous about everything, but I love that mix. Have a great summer, guys, and thank you so much for letting me be a part of TAP.
My favorite TAP moment is a culmination of moments. It has been every time I've had the opportunity to work with all of the different members of the TLT, because I've learned something from every single one of them, and because of TAP and because of the people whom I've been able to work with, I am a better teacher because of it.
Well, I won't back down. No, I won't back down. You can stand me up at the gates of hell, but I won't back down. No, I'll stand.
Okay, my most favorite memory of TAP is a two-parter. So part one is when I started off as a career teacher. I was hugely impressed and motivated when I had my first post-conference, and the teachers that watched me, and I think was Mr. Walton also, used a lot of the academic vocabulary that we learned from the rubric, and it just made me so proud, just so hugely proud and motivated that other professionals were seeing that I could actually do the rubric and implement the rubric in a PE situation, and it motivated me incredibly, just through the roof. And I was just so proud of my teaching and so proud that other people would think that I was doing a good job, and that was just hugely motivating for me. So the second part goes into me then becoming a mentor teacher. I was really glad that I had that experience of being a career teacher first and then a mentor teacher because it gave me a different perspective. So I tried to carry that momentum when I became a mentor to really rally behind people and help them and show them all the wonderful things that they are doing, that people are doing some great things. And then when it comes to the refinement, that we could, make a model, make a plan, and show them that there's something that they actually could do that would be not always difficult. Sometimes a simplistic twist can make a huge improvement on that particular lesson. And probably the best part of that is I've had at least 2 teachers come to me after the fact and tell me what I did for their post-conference model of the refinement, that they still use that to this day, some of the things that I've created for them and what a big impact it's made for them, and that just made me hugely proud.
So as I think about the work that we've done with TAP in the last 4 years or 5 years, it really is truly remarkable, the changes that we've made in education and what we've learned. As I look back, that will be, I think, the highlight of my career and the work I've done is what we've done here with TAP.
My favorite TAP memory has to be the trip to Washington, D.C. Getting a flat tire on the way to the airport, having to be rescued and picked up, then getting snowed in Chicago, and visiting that fake Lincoln Memorial in the airport. All the fun little shenanigans running through the airport and being silly, and finally planes, trains, and automobiles, having to get on a weird plane and then taking that train from Baltimore to where we needed to be in Washington, D.C., I think definitely ranks at the top of my TAP memories.
So my best TAP memory would be being able to work with so many different teachers and also go into so many different classrooms and observe so many different styles of teaching and see the way teachers teach and different strategies in so many different classrooms. I would have to say that's one of my best TAP memories, is just the collaboration among my peers.
Okay, so my favorite TAP memory or moment comes from the first year of TAP, and I would say it's probably the first cluster meetings that I ever witnessed. The first year, Carol and that first year master teacher crew made it clear to me that I wasn't allowed to come into clusters until November. So when I was finally taken out of house arrest and allowed to go out and observe clusters, I went to a bunch of them pretty quickly over the course of a week or two, and I was blown away by what I saw, and I really felt like we had sort of figured things out finally with regard to PD. It was proof that this whole process is proof that if you take the very best teachers, put them in a position where they feel supported and they have a little bit of direction but not too much direction, they can take other teachers, kids, and schools to areas that we never even thought were possible.
Good. Yeah. It's one of my very favorite memories of the TAP system has to be my very first cluster. I remember feeling anxious and excited and nervous all at one time, just like I was when I went to college, and I kept thinking, I'm going back to college, learning the newest techniques. Plus, there's maybe a little bit of money for me instead of me paying for my classes. I just thought it was the neatest thing, the newest thing, and I was really excited.
My favorite memory of my TAP experience was year one. It was in that fact-finding year where a group of teachers had gone to Texas, and we were going to go to a school, and Brett was driving the van, and we got lost, and so we started taking streets, like dirt roads. We went through buildings. I mean, it was crazy, and it just kind of reminds me of how the whole TAP process has been. A little crazy. It's been frightening. It's been fun. It's a fabulous ride. Not always easy, but definitely worth the trip.
So my best TAP moments are probably the fun that we had going to the conferences down south and over to Washington, D.C. There's not a specific time that I really remember, but I really liked turning work friends into real friends, and specifically getting to work with Stacy for those couple years that I did.
and that's something that I cherish and that I'll always remember. And a fun thing that I will never forget about TAP was when some certain people who will remain nameless got up and shook their booties to Baby Got Back at the piano bar. I will never forget. That was so much fun, and I have not laughed that hard in a long time. So that's it.
Okay, so how has TAP influenced my teaching? Well, I would say nothing has influenced my teaching more than TAP. I've been a teacher for 15 years, and the TAP program has been the most intensive, rigorous program I've ever experienced. I've learned the most about teaching from TAP than I've learned in any other type of program, and it has permanently influenced my teaching for the rest of my career, the rest of my 15 years or more. I'm going to use a lot of the skills that I learned in TAP. It has definitely made me a better teacher.
So my favorite part, and the thing I probably miss the most about working in the TAP program, is getting to have in-depth collaborative conversations about lessons, both with my co-observer, so really sitting down and going through just the whole lesson and the script from it, and analyzing it with the rubric, because that is probably where I learn the most about teaching, and then getting to have the conversation with the teacher. So that whole process of the observation based on the rubric is my favorite part.
Okay, there. All right, so one of my best favorite TAP memories is actually working with my mentees and getting to sit down and talk about what they did in the lesson, and we had some laughs. Sometimes it was a little uncomfortable, but we always got where we needed to go, and I just appreciated sitting down with my fellow co-worker teachers and talking about our craft.
When I think of my fondest TAP memory, naturally I think about lesson delivery. I think about that student engagement and the rubric and how powerful it is. But I'm going to go on more of a personal note. I remember a little trip, and we were at a conference learning so many things, new things, and we all went out to dinner. And in the car I was riding home in, we got a little call that said, you need to come back to the restaurant. The credit card for the district has been declined. So we raced back, we opened the door, and somebody accidentally slammed my hand in the door. But at that moment, that wasn't the point. The point was, at that moment, I realized the camaraderie and the relationships I'd formed with the other master teachers. One jumped out of the car, ran to the bar, got ice. The other one got a cute Band-Aid with little pictures on it. The next one was like, oh my gosh, you're bleeding. Everything, it just turned out to be one of those aha moments that you realize I had really made some great new friends. So that's my experience. P.S. I forgot one important message in that story. After the hand was slammed in the car door, I looked up at Mrs. Ellis and said, that's okay, I could probably file a workman's comp. Dead silence in the van, and not another word was spoken. I thought it was hysterical, and apparently it wasn't.
My best TAP memory. So there's a lot of memories. So it's kind of hard to just come up with one. Obviously, one that jumps out in my mind is, of course, Lowell's hair. I never got a chance to touch it. He has quite a fleet of security around him, and it just never happened for me, and I'm sad about that. But probably my most memorable moment from implementing TAP was during year one, leading a post-conference and having Teddy Broussard coach it afterwards. I thought that was a great experience. It pushed me to coach my coaches, which I've really embraced during my last year of TAP, and I'm sad that will be going away, because I think in order to build leadership, you need to build it through those individual conversations. I think teachers that can have those difficult conversations and do them in a respectful manner are the leaders that we need in our district now and into the future. So I guess my favorite TAP memory goes back to being able to coach the coach, and I began that process with Teddy Broussard during year one. So that would be my most memorable TAP moment.
Okay, so a favorite TAP memory of mine has to be walking into our cluster room after an observation or something and finding my teaching partner sprawled out on the floor, stretching and rolling her muscles, and during lunch just kind of getting ready for her next derby practice. And I will always cherish that memory because it reminds me of all the fun that Fran Artesoni and I had collaborating together as a master teacher team. And beyond that, just all the fun and the enrichment that I've had collaborating with everyone involved in TAP, from my TLT to my master and mentor peers, to administration, to NIET. Just getting together and talking about teaching. It's awesome. It's amazing. It's our passion, and I will always cherish the memories that TAP has brought about with teachers talking about teaching.
All right. So my most memorable moments about TAP were seeing what effective PD can look like, and I had the dynamic duo of Kelly and Corey. And just to see the creative, engaging way that PD can look and have that learning go directly back to the classroom was mind-blowing for me. That is something that I'm glad we are keeping in our district and moving forward with, is embedded professional development. But that was my biggest takeaway, is just how impactful that was when it is done well, and it's done creatively, and it's engaging and relevant. So TAP has been the biggest game changer in my career and has impacted me as far as making me a better administrator, and will continue to do so in my career.
Well, as I look back on the journey in TAP, one of the things I really remember is learning how to collect evidence in formal observations, and how important that was. The teachers could see that it was the real evidence from the lessons. But the other evidence that was really fun to collect was when I got to go to Washington, D.C., and I showed up at the piano bar, and I was in the late crew, but the evidence that I saw was that the people and the colleagues that I met and the friendships that I got to make in TAP was that the evidence was going to be a lot of fun, but I won't talk about the specific evidence from the piano bar night.
So when I'm asked what do I remember or think the most about TAP, I have to tell you that it's the unanticipated things. As the changes in our kids have been amazing. I have seen things from them that I didn't even realize were going to take place. The amount of dialoguing that's going on, walking into a first and second grade classroom and watching them give feedback to each other, going into the upper grade classrooms and watching them work collaboratively as they build things and solve problems without answers necessarily in front of them. The increase in the talking that they do, the increase of their academic language, all those things were not necessarily anticipated. And those came about because the teachers invested in their instructional practices. They took the techniques they learned during cluster, they took the knowledge that they have from the rubric and what that means, and they actually applied it. And I'm very proud of the way teachers tackled that. It really has made huge changes at the school. But one of my favorite little TAP anecdotes happened at the end of near the end of the first year in a first grade classroom. And the teachers were still really working on applying the rubric throughout the day, and we had a little first grade student raise his hand and remind the teacher that she forgot to put the objective on the board. So that shows that everybody was listening. So there's so many memories about TAP that have just been phenomenal. I'm just glad that we all had a chance to be a part of it.
Okay, my favorite memory of TAP was when an area of refinement that I had in one of my post-conferences then became an area of reinforcement in a next observation, and it was really exciting for me to see how all the support and all the support from mentors and masters kind of helped me see how much I had grown as a teacher, and just knowing that all of that hard work we were doing in cluster and through field testing paid off and helped me feel more successful.
So I was interviewing to be a master teacher at the end of the first year, and I was in my principal's office, and there were a couple of teachers who were also in on the interview. And everything went fine. The interview was great, but when the last question was asked, it took me by surprise. So the question that they asked was, why do you want to do this job? And I just completely lost it. And if you know me, I don't do that very often. So just couldn't even speak for probably a couple minutes. Just kind of really taken aback by the question and by my own emotion. And really what it came down to for me, why this is my moment, is because in that moment I realized how important it is. You know, why we do this, how important it is for not only ourselves, for master teachers, but for the teachers on our campus, and for students, and for student achievement, and that we all are on the journey together. I looked at the two teachers who were in the room, and they could see me crying, and could see the emotion that I had about the question, and I think everybody realized why we do it. And I think that's the most important thing about TAP, is that it's a journey that we embarked on together, everybody working together and everybody working hard. And it's one that doesn't end. It's a journey that continues. And that's my moment.
All right, so that concept of moving people by applying equal amounts of pressure and support is my TAP memory. That is something I will take with me forever. It's not only true in classrooms with teachers and coaching situations, but it is very, very true for us as teacher leaders. We would not be where we are without that pressure and support, especially year one, the WTF year. I don't know where I would be if it was just the pressure, or even if it was just the support. It wasn't enough. You needed them both. I needed them both. Big thank you, year one, to Jim, Andy, Carol, Kathy. Thank you for applying that pressure, but also providing the support. So that concept extends beyond just support and pressure from higher level people amongst our master teacher group. I am so, so, so proud of how far we've come and everything we've accomplished, especially since that first year. It wouldn't have been the way it was, again, without that concept. Kathy Milhauser, you know better than anyone what life was like that first year with me and in our situation, and I can't imagine having gone through it without you. You made things work, you made them come together, you made them manageable, and I just learned so very much from you. And then Corey, years 2 and 3, you are perfectly skilled at applying pressure and support. You are incredibly supportive by nature, but also by nature you drive people to go farther, to do better, to stretch themselves, to get out of their comfort zones and do things, in my case, that I never thought I could have accomplished. So thank you. Thank you. I am indebted to you forever. Thank you, TAP, but more so, thank you, Lucia Mar.
One of my fondest memories is not just the learning that I did, it was working with Kurt and Kelly. So here's my rap for TAP. Of course you know I travel to and fro, from Lang to Mesa and back again. I was always on the go. TAP, loved working with Kurt and Kelly. Made our connections, made our games, and used our cube strategy. A special memory was working with Andy. He's fun, he's quick, he's got good wit, and now TAP is part of me. That's a wrap for TAP.